Just a day after Iran's failed missile strike on U.S. forces in Jordan, Central Command made the following announcement just in the last several minutes. We're quoting here that U.S. forces began launching strikes against Iran at 8 p.m. Eastern time today, a little over a half hour ago. The strikes, CENTCOM says, are a powerful response to yesterday's attempted Iranian attacks on U.S. forces based in the Middle East, end quote. We're joined now by retired Air Force Colonel Cedric Leighton. And listen, there's been a lot of telegraphing of these attacks today. President Trump said so, including in some colorful language in an interview earlier today, that he would be striking back for those Iranian missile attacks we saw yesterday. What is the military objective of strikes like this? Is it purely retaliation?
Well, that's one part of it, Jim. I think what we're seeing is not only retaliation, but also the potential for the start of something else. There's some reports out there that Admiral Cooper, the commander of U.S. CENTCOM, might be planning a 10 to 14-day campaign. So whether this is the start of that or not is, of course, something that we don't know yet. But that is certainly a possibility. But at the very least, retaliation, but also the need to engage in measures that basically result in force protection, and that would include going after some of the areas where missiles are launched from, particularly in western Iran and also some in southwestern Iran. So that would be one of the primary objectives, I would think.
The trouble is, Colonel Leighton, is that the U.S. and Israel have been striking such targets for months now, and Iran has maintained a capability, a diminished capability, but a capability nonetheless, to strike its neighbors and to strike U.S. bases in the region with impact, right? And the U.S. lost 4 soldiers in Jordan just a short time ago. What is the evidence that a new night of strikes or round of strikes will reliably eliminate that threat?
I don't think we can say that any strikes that are currently being conducted will eliminate that threat. I think the evidence is pretty clear, as you laid out, Jim, that the efforts that we've done so far, that we've conducted so far, are not resulting in an elimination of the Iranian capability to strike at targets that include U.S. personnel and U.S. assets. So that's going to be a real problem. What they can do is they can coerce Iran toward another goal, and that other goal might be the negotiating table, but right now it sure doesn't look like we're going in that direction.
Well, and listen, to that point, the president has claimed multiple times that Iran is interested in going back to the table, desperate to go back to the table. But we had the deputy foreign minister say a short time ago that we have sent no request for negotiation with the U.S. during the past 16 to 17 days. At least in public statements, they're not expressing any immediate desire. A question I have for you is, because we've talked a lot about the impact of the war in Iran on U.S. missile stockpiles, particularly interceptor missiles, air defense missiles, those that go into Patriots, et cetera, but also attack missiles like the Tomahawk, for instance. Can the U.S. military, and would you expect the military in strikes like the one we're seeing tonight, particularly if it were to go on for 10 to 14 days, is there a way to reduce the expenditure of those missiles so that you don't back yourself deeper into a supply hole, right? Magazine depth, as folks talk about.
Yeah, so that's a really difficult problem set for American commanders to deal with, because we've been used to expending missiles like the Tomahawk and similar missiles, as well as our air defense missiles, in a fairly free manner. And when you look at the expenditure rates in Iran versus in Ukraine, the expenditure rates in Iran are much, much higher than they are for Ukraine. And there are a lot of reasons for that. But the key factor here is this: the U.S. has really left its defense industrial base lacking in this particular case, the capacity for our industrial base to reproduce those missiles and to bring them out to the front lines where they can be used is not as robust as it should be. And I think it's become pretty clear that, with the expenditures that we've seen in Iran, that there's a lot of work to be done in that particular area. So for this offensive to succeed, I think they are going to be, basically rationing some of the missiles they're using, but they're going to try to make them as effective as possible, and that's going to be a key element right there.
New CNN polling on the war, showing that 72% of Americans disapprove of how the president is handling the conflict. 73% say he is not paying enough attention to the actual problems that most Americans faced, and 70% disapprove of his handling of the economy. John, first, do Democrats in Iowa see the war as an opportunity to gain advantage? I mean, obviously, some of these are tougher battlegrounds than others, but do they see this as potentially driving their political fortunes in the fall?
They know that it's helping them, Jim. The language always has to be careful. Some of the first fatalities were here in Iowa. So people here, opposition to the war runs high. Questions about the president's policy runs high. But Democrats say it is just simply a fact that their standing in some of the races out here have improved. You're called Iowa a battleground state. Just that is kind of breaking news, if you will. Look at it. I'll show you. I have the mini magic wall with me on the road. Go back to 2024. I mean, Donald Trump won here less than 2 years ago, November 2024, by 13 points, right? Look at all the red on this map. Right, rural America is Trump country, and Iowa is a big rural state. But, number one, this state has a deep anti-war history. It was an unpopular war 20 years ago in 2006, Iraq. That was the last time Iowa Democrats elected a governor. They think they might be able to do that this year. 2 years after that, in 2008, Iowa, first the caucuses, and then in November, lost Barack Obama into the history books because of the unpopular Iraq war at the time. Now it's the Iran war. You see all that red again, Jim. I just want to say, if you have all this red, what is that? That's farms. That's diesel fuel for your tractors, your combines, and your other equipment. That is gasoline to drive. That is fertilizer for those farms as well, which costs money, and some farmers say getting more scarce in this. And just one other point, as gas prices go up every time this comes back, if you go from Illinois to Nebraska, that's 300 miles. This is a big rural state. If you go from Minnesota down to Missouri below us, that's 200 miles to drive. If you live in a big rural state, you drive a lot. When gas prices go up, you get mad. When you get mad, you take it out of the party in power.
No question. And diesel prices up even more than gas prices. So as you speak to voters and to party officials there, given we're less than 100 days out from the midterms, and these numbers are awful for the president, is there anything they believe the president can do at this point that would fundamentally alter or at least lessen the political impact in November?
Yeah, when you talk to Republicans, smart Republicans who understand this state, the part you just made, Jim, lessen. They think it's too late. The affordability crisis people are feeling, maybe gas prices will come down a little bit, groceries are still high. Is the president focused on the right priorities? Very hard to turn that numbers. We're 97 days now away from the election. Just want to bring another number into it from our new poll and bring it up to you. These are devastating numbers for any president, It's Donald Trump at the moment, but I've covered midterm elections a long time. A 34% overall approval rating. That's among all Americans. That is a recipe for a midterm blowout. Here's what concerns Republicans. The president's approval is at 78% among Republicans. That is the lowest point, his approval among his own party, since he's become president, in both of his terms. That's the lowest number. Elections, especially midterms, are about passion and turnout. Will Republicans show up? Every Republican I talk to, pollsters and strategists say they are very nervous about that. 24%, that means you've lost the middle of the electorate when independents do not support you. So what does that mean? I want to show you this. Let's go back to the House elections in 2000. You can't even tell where the districts are, right? When I show you that map, it's all red because Republicans now control all 4 House seats here. But there's one here in southeast Iowa, the 1st district. The margin in that race was 800 votes 2 years ago. Wow. Democrats think they can pick that up in this anti-Trump, anti-Republican environment. And they're also, Jim, targeting this district in South Des Moines, where I'm standing to the south. That was a bit more of a race. It was a bigger race, but they think in this environment it's possible. So Democrats think even here, great possibilities. And if they have possibilities in Iowa, think about when you get into more purple states.
Yeah, no question. John King, good to have you there on the ground.